Welcome to Creators for Creators. I am Amber Kelly, the Director of Community and Support at Autoshrove. And today I get to chat with Southern Shotty, the creator of the most adorable crafty asset pack, the Blender Dynamics effects, and Stop Mo, which is free and I imagine was used for one of my absolutely favorite Blender short films, Watermelon Girl, which I am excited to talk about. I'm really excited to get to know you a little better, Southern Shotty, and to hear about where you started, where you are now, and how you got there, and also the amazing short film that you made. So
Yeah.
thank you for joining us, and welcome, Southern Shotty. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's been a busy few weeks. I'm working on some new products, but other than that, a little tired, but good outside of that.
Burning the midnight oil, as they say.
Oh, yeah. I'm working on some new courses and some new products. And then we could talk about this more later, but Watermelon Girls led to some potential other opportunities within film. So just juggling a lot of things.
It's amazing. Actually, why don't we just jump right into Watermelon Girl, because I absolutely loved that short film. It is so beautiful in so many ways.
Thank you.
And I was curious, I have been curious ever since, if that has taken you on to any other opportunities, if it's going to turn into a longer film, if it brought you into a different opportunity for another film. So yeah, let's hear where that went.
Yeah, so working on Watermelon Girl, I have a story video online where I talk about the creation process. If you have questions about that, we can talk about that too. But in terms of where it's taken me or the results of it is I used Watermelon Girl as a kind of like a resource on my channel and a motivator to encourage me to make certain types of videos or certain type of products. So on one hand, success came from Watermelon Girl and the fact that that's why I made the crafty asset pack. That's why I made the dynamic visual effects pack. That's why I made some of the courses I did and the tutorials I did, is they kind of coexisted and fed off of one another. So in a way, Watermelon Girl contributed to the success of the channel, not in the film itself, but in the growth of the channel and the products along the way that I made over the years. Also, just in all the pieces of Blender that I had to learn, and certain things that I had to master that, I might have not otherwise pursued, led to a lot of opportunities to kind of share the knowledge I gained along the way. Because, they say that in order to learn something, you should teach it. So sometimes I actually put that into practice where if I needed to figure out how to make something within the film, I would approach it from the angle of like, how would I tutorialize this? And, go watch a bunch of resources, read through some documentation, do some experiments, figure it out, and kind of share the learning. So, and on one hand, the success of Watermelon Girl has been just in how it contributed to the channel and the community that I'm trying to foster around Blender 3D. But there was also the goal of what if this could be more? What if this could be a series on its own? What if it could be a film on its own? And for anybody that's ever tried to pursue that line of work, even if you are already well established in Hollywood, I've heard of major A-list actors struggling to get films and things made. So I knew that it was kind of a long shot to really expect a grand opportunity to come from it, because just people that already have all the connections struggle with it. But I still wanted to give it a go and see that if I put this film out there, put it in some festivals and contacted some people, could things come from it? And the answer is like yes and no.
Maybe.
So I would have liked for the film to have gotten more views. There's a lot of short films out there with 1 million+ views, and I thought like I need to hit that number to succeed. I think I'm like north of 200,000. So not a failure by any means in terms of views on my channel, but I was also releasing a somewhat family-oriented short on animation on a Blender 3D tutorial channel, and YouTube like really likes to dial in the algorithm. So I knew that I was going to be like fighting against my recommended audience from YouTube on the search page to get this. So I still considered it a success when I hit that number. But the real success is not the amount of eyes, it's the type of eyes you have on your project. And that can be really important, especially in the world of social media, where just more is kind of like what people are aiming for. Sometimes that's not what it is. Ducky, for example, his videos range, about 20 to 50,000, and there are channels with much higher views, but Ducky's very successful in growing his product list and his Patreon list and things like that. So sometimes it matters who you're appealing to. And so I had a conversation with Ducky who really kind of walked me through, hey, if it doesn't get as many views as you think, that's okay. And he was very reassuring in that. And so when it hit 200,000, at first I was a bit disappointed because I'd hoped for more because I spent so many years on it and a lot of money. But as I said, it was about the right eyes. And what's interesting is that even though I have other videos that have performed much higher, this video brought in the right amount of people. So people started showing up in my inbox, people from the industry that I was a fan of, people that did children's television shows from the 90s that I was excited to meet about, people from large networks that I was excited to talk to. And it's not that a massive door or opportunity opened per se from any of these experiences, but it connected me with a lot of people that I was excited to connect with. Even on social media, just getting some feedback from people that work on films and classical animations and things that I would have never even thought knew I existed, were commenting. And that was a very exciting experience for me. However, there have been a few opportunities that came from it, and I'm under NDA, so I can't say too much, but I'm currently working with a new studio from producers that have made several films that have done well at the box office and done well in the awards circuit. And they're looking to explore some new IPs. And they reached out because of Watermelon Girl, watching that on my YouTube channel. And now I'm talking to them about the potential of collaborating either on some of my other ideas that they really like, because I have a whole notebook of ideas. Watermelon Girl was just one. And then they're also talking to me about look development because they really appreciated the art direction and the style of the film. And then, of course, there was interest in the fact that it was done in Blender by a single person, which I think there's a lot of great creative tools out there, but I think Blender really props up and enables the independent artist with some of its tools that it has specifically to produce short films in a bit of an easier manner. So producing the short film didn't get as much views as I liked, as I said, but it seems to hit the right eyes. And because of that, I may be working on a new short film or a new IP short film with some partners, and that's a very exciting prospect.
I thought that I had heard you made that film entirely on your own, and I was
I
curious
did.
about how
Yeah.
long did that take you?
Yeah. So the story I tell on YouTube is about 5 years because I started and failed so many times. I should clarify, I made everything except for the audio. I did hire out the audio. So,
Okay.
and of course, use like asset packs and things like that. But in terms of like who was working on the production, who wrote it, who edited it, who composited it, who animated it, who lit it, that was all me. So yeah, I say that it took me about 5 years, which is true, but that's because I kept starting and stopping and failing, and I consider that part of the process because I had a few failed attempts. I mean, if you want to talk about every failed attempt, I tried to make this film 10 years ago, but in terms of like I was really heads down trying to do this, it took about 5 years of starting and stopping. Now, I spent a lot of time in look development, creating assets, learning the pipeline, stopping, restarting the pipeline, trying to refine it to make it something that I could do by myself because I knew to do it's I think it's about 13 sets and 9 characters, something around that is a lot of work for one person to do. It's not a very intelligent thing to do. Most successful short films by single creators will deal with like a single location and like 2 characters, which is a much wiser approach. But I had the story in my head and I just kept shrinking it and shrinking it and shrinking it. I got it as small as I could. I was like, I think this is as small as I can make it. So yeah, it took about 5 years with all that look development and everything. Interestingly enough, though, once I figured out the pipeline, once I figured out the characters and I had rigged and modeled everything. So I built the characters, I built the sets, I built the textures, I'd learned everything I needed. I had the shot list. I'd say the actual production and animation took me about like 3 to 6 months. And I did a lot of it over parental leave. We had a newborn baby, and I didn't realize that they basically just sleep so much in the beginning that what I did is I set up my laptop on a card table in the room next to the baby. And I would just like sit there and just chug away and animate, send it over to my desktop to render, and then just check on my wife when she needed help. So I just kind of went back and forth on that. So yeah, I did a lot of it on parental leave. But so
So your child is going to sleep best to the dulcet sounds of a mouse moving and a keyboard.
yeah, yep, exactly.
You're going to have to create that on a sound machine somewhere for the
Perhaps
future.
just clicking
Yeah,
and the dad groaning because he's just upset about something.
that's mighty convenient.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. So when you say that you failed, what would you consider a failure? Just trying to
Yeah.
make the project too big or not having the correct pipeline to get to
Mhm.
the line?
Yeah, yeah, both. So there were times where the project and scope was too big, and to solve that was one, just to restructure portions of the story to be a bit more scalable, but also to really think about how I was going to approach things visually. For
Hmm.
example, it's very difficult for a single animator to do things like water simulations and hair simulations. And that's where a lot of the stylistic choices come in, with her having hair of yarn and all the water being made from paper. So I tried to turn a limitation into an opportunity for maybe something a bit different with design. And that occurs throughout the film. For example, the day to night cycle, couldn't figure out how to like do it in a way that didn't take a ton of time. So that's why if you watch the film, the day to night cycle is literally just a paper background that rotates from day to night, and that became one of my most popular social interactions. Was that post. People seem to like that approach to it. So yeah, part of it was scaling down the story, but scaling down the visuals and approaching things like, all right, I can't animate 9 characters with full Disney quality rigs, right? So that's just too much for one person. So instead I looked at, how can I design these characters so they have less to animate? So the king has no arms, no legs, right? And the frog like is just like a wooden body that bounces around with a tongue that flops. But you don't want to sacrifice quality, or what I think is the most important emotion principle, which is appeal. So, how can I make these characters appealing? Well, if you look at how many popular characters draw their appeal, a lot of it comes through their secondary motion. So, Stitch has big floppy ears that flop when he runs and move around, or you might have big jolly like Santa character with things just kind of bobbling all around his backpack. So what I tried to do with all my characters is, as I remove the motion, is always make sure that there's one or two layers of secondary motion and follow through that could still generate a bit of interest. So for the king, he's got that bobbly head and the beard and the crown that bounce around, which are really easy to animate, but kind of add a lot of life back to a character where I've essentially stripped all the animation out so that I could produce it as one person. So yeah,
Excellent.
that would be kind of how I scaled the production visually.
So you just blew my mind when you said that Watermelon Girl's hair wasn't originally yarn because
Mhm.
that is
Yeah.
such a central element of the storyline. So now I'm like, what was the story if her hair wasn't yarn?
Yeah, initially she wasn't. Yeah, so initially her hair was just meant to be an emotive factor. So it was just going to be that she was kind of this little tumbly character, and when she was sad, her hair would droop, and when she was happy, it would perk up. So really, the hair was just there as a large element of a character silhouette that could convey a lot of emotion, especially like in wide shots and things. So that was the initial intention. So what I really wanted to do first was, I was looking at Aardman films, which are like the claymation films like Wallace and Gromit, and looking at how they did hair, and they did needle felt hair. And I really wanted to try and do something like that, but oh my gosh, it was taking so long to render. Now with the geometry nodes hair, and there's actually a hair system on your site that I like. We'll talk about that later. But you can actually do that look now, and relatively with AI denoising, and relatively decent render times. But when I started this 5 years ago, AI denoising wasn't even part of Blender, I don't think. Or if it was so kind of like smeared, it wasn't good enough to work. So I had to look at other opportunities for how to do hair. And I was playing It Takes Two, and they had braided hair in that. I was like, oh my gosh, like I should do something like that. So then I came up with the idea of doing yarn. And then once I did that, I was like, oh, she could actually use this. Like this could be her character skill. And yeah, so the visuals actually kind of helped reformat the story there a bit as well.
It is absolutely fascinating how all the challenges became these actually brilliant, beautiful
Yeah.
parts of the film.
Yeah, I would encourage. Sorry, I didn't mean to overcut you.
The solution to those challenges became some of the most brilliant portions of the film, in my opinion, from what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, they always say that limitations breed creativity, and I think that some people struggle to embrace that. So what I would encourage is that anybody listening trying to make your own projects, when you come up with something, for example, let's say the hair of Watermelon Girl, rather than trying to brute force your way through and just make the hair simulations work, you'll kind of reach a point where you realize like, okay, I can get the hair simulations, but they're not going to look as good as I want. I think at that time I might would start to think, how could I approach the hair differently? You know, do I want to go like with a painterly hair like they do in video games? And just kind of like start to sit down and just like reset and try and write two or three solutions before you pick one. And I think if you approach creative hurdles that way, you'll generally come out with a a more appealing or clever solution, as opposed to like I'm going to do a hair sim, I'm going to learn it and just do the best I can and like just move forward anyways. That I think oftentimes will result in a worse just looking product usually. Yeah.
Your advice. And you mentioned some of your inspiration between Wallace and Gromit and It Takes Two. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was curious about that because I do love your artistic style, and I want to
Hmm.
know. I was curious, are there inspirations? And we've heard a couple of them, but would you say
Hmm.
that you're inspired by other things as well?
Yeah, so I hear a lot of people struggling with creative block, and I always think I'm like, well, then you're just not like consuming enough art, and like people will get really stuck in. I want to do a comic book, so they just read a ton of comic books, and that doesn't really like open your mind. It kind of like it makes you good at maybe copying one type of style. So I think it's really important to consume a variety of art. So a lot of people they look at Watermelon Girl and they think that I must be inspired by like Nightmare Before Christmas or Wallace and Gromit. And those are on the list. But I would actually say my biggest inspirations for a Watermelon Girl came from independent games and Nintendo games. Nintendo, in particular, looking at how they utilized lower end hardware to develop creative solutions to make interesting art design without just blasting you know like metahuman Unreal 5 engine graphics at it. So like looking at things like Wind Waker and how they designed those characters to still be appealing on a system that couldn't really handle as much graphical finesse. So I'd say that I ended up looking at those things a lot more for inspiration. But yeah, of course, I looked at films and things like that. And then just growing up, my family was always doing arts and crafts together. So with a lot of like Watermelon Girl, once I kind of decided to pursue that visual style, so when I initially started kind of doing crafty style, I was pretty much just doing like actual Play-Doh and claymation. And I thought this is kind of like limiting. Where can I do to expand this? So like when I look at scenes in Watermelon Girl, I'd be like, if I was making this with my mom and dad and I was 6, how would we make this? And so like the background is paper and the clouds are cotton balls. And so I started kind of trying to approach it that way. So I'd say it's a mixture of kind of doing crafts hands-on growing up, of course other stop motion films, and really looking at how like certain IPs like Nintendo and stuff succeed with less.
Thus, also the crafty asset pack.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Tell us more
There's a lot of
that in that asset pack.
Yeah, so the Crafty Asset Pack kind of came about as they had the asset browser and I needed something that I could drag and drop into Watermelon Girl. I use Substance Painter and Substance Suite to do a lot of my texturing process. So almost all of the assets in Crafty Asset Pack were designed in Substance Design, and now called, they keep changing the name. I think right now it's Sampler. It used to be like Alchemy. They keep changing it. I think right now it's Sampler, and design in those products, and then I ported them over into Blender with the asset browser. And I use some of those assets in their final form, like throughout the film. I do a lot of my final texturing in Painter itself, but what was really helpful with the Crafty asset pack was that I could open a scene and just drag and drop materials on it and really start kind of playing with the art design in the viewport in a really like organic way, that it could be like, well, should the background be paper, or should this water be paper, or should this water be kind of like a plastic sheet, should this be metal, should this be stone, and just kind of playing with that. And as I did that, I ended up kind of creating a material pack really geared towards people who wanted to mimic that handcrafted style, because I had noticed that like the Clado shader was really popular, and I used that on my short film as well. And I saw a lot of people using that shader. I was like, I bet these people would like to expand into other kind of like crafty materials. So that's where it's like I started adding things that I wasn't finding myself that I needed, like styrofoam, popsicle wood, just things like that. So like little button eyes. So I just tried to kind of make what I would need to make the film and kind of expanded upon that. And then I kind of repackaged it and marketed it in a way, and it's been pretty successful by my standards in terms of sales and stuff. So I was excited that it was received well, because I was a bit worried, like, is releasing another material pack like really going to like engage anybody? But I think coming at it from the angle of like, hey, this is like handcrafted materials and stylized materials, I think gave it a little bit of a unique flavor.
I think also the quality of the product gives
Oh, thank
it
you.
gives it a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
boost there. And then also, like you said, you were adding things that you couldn't find anywhere else. So it's
Hmm.
unique in that way. And then you do have a little bit of a name for yourself at this point between YouTube and Watermelon Girl. And I imagine
Yeah.
that helps. And you also have the Elemental Asset Pack. What does that one involve?
Yeah, that one has a bunch of dynamic kind of visual effects. So one thing that I struggled with on Watermelon Girl was that if I wanted to apply dust to a scene, if I just wanted like leaves falling, if I wanted like a quick rain sim, it was just, I had to keep like rebuilding and setting things up. And there are packs out there, like you can find good rain packs, you can find like good fog packs and all these things, but the problem is that a lot of them are really geared towards realism, and when I put it in my crafty world, it didn't work, and I just kind of saw a gap in the market for a stylized, easy to use, dynamic like visual effects pack. And my real goal there was just to make it for people doing like anime or stylized type work like I'm doing, just to be able to just drag things in and just get moving on with the rest of the scene. Because if you're making a short film or a scene, like usually you're not really excited about creating a dust system or creating a fog system. You're excited to place the characters, you're excited to light the scene, you're excited to build the environment and put it together and see how it comes. And a lot of those visual effects things can just become extraordinarily tedious. And I
Hmm.
was just looking to kind of remove the tedium from the process and provide something that renders a bit faster too. Everything's stylized and simple to render. I think it all works in Eevee and cycles, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, just trying to kind of speed up that process, make it less tedious and a little more user friendly as well.
And then you have Stop Mo, which is free, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So Stopmo is so I used like I'm not a coder, but I used LLM models to try and teach me how to write some basic Python and then use it to write a good chunk of the code. And this was earlier models of like LLM models, and they were not great at it. So what ended up happening is I basically just asked it to explain all the code to me, and then like I was copying and piecing parts from chats and other chats, and then it would eventually just fail and get like stuck in an error loop. So I'd have to start a new chat, copy pieces over that one, and be like, "Hey, how do I fix this? How do I do this?" And I just like really over the course of a few days stumbled my way into creating that add-on. And since then, there's actually one or two community members that have reached out and cleaned up the code. People that have actual development experience, which was really nice. The reason I made it is that in Blender, I wanted to do the stop motion look. So there's two ways I can do that. I can go through, I can animate everything on a constant keyframe, and I knew that I was like, that's going to take so long because like the advantage of 3D animation is that I put a keyframe on frame one, I put a keyframe on frame 10, and it does the work in between the keyframes for me. So I knew that if I animated everything by hand, I was like, it'll look a little bit better to the professionals. So I was like, but most people won't be able to see the difference. And I was like, and it's going to take me 5 times as long. So there's this stepped interpolation filter you can put on the graph editor, and it will allow you to kind of like determine like where the keyframes move. So it's like I could set 2 keyframes and it would just kind of like set on an automatic constant across the graph. The problem is that at that version that I was working out of, I think I was still in the 3.0 series. I was like, well, I can't. I was trying to do it by just applying this filter to every graph. And one character can have 100 graph lines easy in an animation. And I was like having to copy and paste it to everything. And then I'd be like, actually, I need to offset it 1 frame, or I don't need it to play on this frame. And it was just becoming a nightmare because then I'd have to go through and update it on everything. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, this is going to like kill the project. So I was looking for a solution, and that was where Stopmo came in. It's essentially just automatically applying everything to the graphs for you, and then every time you hit apply, it'll like update the changes. And it saved me hundreds of hours of work, and honestly I don't think the project would have gotten done without it. So yeah, that was why it came about. And then when I was done, because I kind of just like hacked it together as this tool to enable me to make Watermelon Girl, when I was done with it, I was like, I'm not like a developer, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to keep polishing and adding to this. So I was like, I'm just going to give it away for free. And I was really surprised at how many people downloaded it. It's a very high number of downloads. I'd have to pull it up to look, but I like way up there, way past the tens of thousands, And I was like, I had no idea people would even be that interested in something like that. So it's still free.
I'll look it up after this and put it up there so everybody can see
Yeah.
how many downloads it's had. And the fact that you
Yeah.
got help from actual coders within the community is really, really cool.
Yeah. People reached out with like some tips and things on how to improve it, which was really nice of them. So
It does sound like you're connecting a lot with the community between that and talking to Ducky as kind of mentoring you through the process of releasing Watermelon Girl. And so I really appreciate that too. Like, do you feel that you get a lot of assistance or promotion or kind of support from the Blender community?
yeah, the Blender community is a real special one because the software is community created. There's a lot of collaboration, and then because it's free, the community is so large. And my experience with the community has been largely positive. So I don't get to interact with the community as much as I would like because I'm so busy working all the time that it's like hard to set a time side time interact as much as I would like to. But I do get a communication in there. I communicate a lot with other content creators. We're always kind of like sharing things in the back. I talked to Ducky and Smeef, and he just changed his channel name. But he released the short film. No, not him. So I'm trying to remember his new channel name. But he created the King short, which was the little 2D side King short. And yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of creators out there, and especially during Watermelon Girl, I talked to like 20, 30 creators just asking for advice, asking if they've shared, and everybody was extraordinarily supportive. I actually had a pretty high turnout for the live stream. I had like a thousand people show up or something for or 1,000 concurrent viewers, I think, at one point. To show up for the Watermelon Girl premiere. And that was largely because of all those content creators kind of jumping in and sharing. And I really appreciated their support on that. So the short answer is yes, I work with a lot with the community, but not as much. I don't get to collaborate as much as I would like. It's more just a lot of communications. But I am collaborating with Ducky uh, on a release of the next product. So
What is that product? Is it close enough
yeah,
to
yeah.
talk about?
Yeah. So we're okay. So when I made Stopmo, it was to fix the problem of, not being able to apply that effect. When I made dynamic visual effects, it was to fix the problem of the tedium of visual effects. And when I made the crafty asset pack, it was because the materials didn't exist that I need. This new product is geared towards motion design and motion graphics, which is what I do professionally outside of Blender. And I use a lot of tool sets outside of Blender. I actually, a lot of people don't know this, but I actually probably have more time clocked into like After Effects than I do Blender, which I
Really?
think shocks a lot of people. Yeah. So I have a ton of 2D experience.
Later. No, just kidding.
Yeah. 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 So I started looking at like I'm basically taking the same approach. I'm like, what are the motion design tools that I wish I had in Blender? Like, what do I wish I could just drag and drop and have be done? So yeah, we're creating a set of motion design tools kind of geared around that philosophy, hoping to release it in the next month or two. And we're actually talking to Superhive right now about doing a motion graphics bundle that would bundle it with some of Ducky's products as well, which are motion graphics oriented. So I'm really excited about that one, making things like animating text and all that type of stuff just a lot easier. A much more powerful array system. I know 5.0 is adding some additional groups and nodes as well of similar vein, but we actually have a pretty unique effector system that we're working on that allows you to index effectors. So you can use like one effector across like several different like geometry node setups that we provide. So trying to make it as user friendly as possible. It'll also come with some motion graphics presets. So we're trying to appeal to more of an advanced crowd that may want this tool set for themselves, but also the beginner crowd that may just want to download and use some of those visuals kind of right out of the box.
That's great. Yeah, Ducky's amazing at the motion graphics, so it seems like a good
Oh, yeah, yeah.
good
Yeah.
switch.
And there's another creator too. He's more known in the space of like he does like Unreal Engine work and a lot of Cinema 4D work, but he's actually the kind of node master because he has a ton of like Houdini experience. So like he builds out the node systems and I work on like the product direction, the marketing, and then I create all the visuals. He's like a very technical artist and I'm more of a visual artist, so we pair well together. And his name's Glass Hand Visual Effects. He has a YouTube channel too, but he focuses more on the production side of things than he does the social side of things.
And you've alluded to this a little bit with your work and how busy you are, but not only do you have the YouTube channel, you have the short film that you created, you have the products, but you have a full-time job.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a I have a full-time job. So I actually do YouTube in the mornings and Saturdays. So when you leave those mean comments, be nice. I'm trying my best. But yeah, so I actually work. I don't speak about this publicly a bunch because I don't want the company to think I'm trying to use their name for clout. But I actually work at one of the top tech companies in America, and I lead uh, expressive motion there. So what that means is that essentially for the entire product, I get to help with motion direction and motion lead on the majority, if not all, of the expressive motion that comes through. So what that looks like in my day job is a lot of like strategic documentation, trying to improve pipelines, trying to ensure that all of the animations we produce support and reinforce branding. Recently going through some restructuring and reorgs, so kind of working through the new team format and the headcount we have and how can we utilize that to the best of our abilities. So kind of a lot of what I talked about doing on Watermelon Girl is like, taking the resources we have and trying to figure out what's the biggest bang for our buck we can get out of this. So I've been doing that for a couple years now and I really enjoy it. And I actually I work in Blender on some products. So I do a mixture of product design toolkits, Adobe Suite and Blender. Blender is my choice for 3D and it's actually a lot of people's choice there for 3D. Oh, yeah, yeah, it's really people like the open nature of it. Working in like tech companies, there's a lot of engineers and just being able to open it up and, alter it to do what they need was great. They actually have their own version of Blender that they run internally on some of the teams where they've modified it to work for their needs, which is really interesting. And I've gotten to create some pretty cool products in 3D there as well that were very challenging to pull off from a technical standpoint, which makes it kind of really exciting as an artist trying to kind of work through those. But yeah, so I do work a side job full time. So yeah, I'm kind of always animating, and it's it's nice because what I do on YouTube makes me better at my day job because like when I show up, I've already kind of since I'm always like searching new problems to solve to create tutorials, when I get to my day job, I've kind of worked through a lot of that. So it's almost kind of like a workout for my like when I wake up in the morning, like, all right, I'm pumped up and have the energy going to like kick off the day now. So yeah, time management is a big thing. So for anybody who thinks you can't make products or personal projects, I promise you you can. It's just it's real difficult time management. Not everybody's financial or health situation may permit it. I understand that. But I think the majority of people, if you truly want to make something, you can. You just really need to like crack down on your time management and most importantly your priority management. So, don't get lost exploring 10 tutorials when you could have made an entire scene in that time.
Wow, great advice. And you have a family as well, so I
Yes.
imagine that's
Yeah, yeah.
one of your
Yeah, I
main
became yeah, I became a new dad, was running a YouTube channel and doing a day job, like, all at the same time, and I was like, "This is a lot." So yeah,
well,
yeah,
congratulations, new dad.
I think yeah, 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 I love it, it's a lot of fun. So, it's the most fun of the 3.
So I do want to talk about, because this is Creators for Creators, what other tools from other creators that you do use most often that you would
Yeah.
recommend to other people, and that we can get your suggestions of things that have really worked for you.
Yeah, a majority of these are available on Superhive. There's 1 or 2 that are not, but I do actually use quite a few add-ons. So, you know, there's a lot of creative software out there like Cinema 4D or Houdini or After Effects or Nuke. And certain softwares, for example, After Effects, I feel like they're propped up by their script community. I feel like that's where like a lot of After Effects succeeds is in its script community, and I feel like Blender's the same way. I feel like if something is missing from Blender you need, you can probably find it in a script, and I think that's part of the power of Blender is the kind of like the plug and play aspect of the add-ons and how that allows you to customize the software towards your needs. And the amount of assets out there is crazy because the software is free. It has such a large user base, and there's so much in the community that there's a ton of tools out there. And I've used quite a few. I have looking at my list here, this is one of the ones that I don't think is available on Superhive, but I think it might be now. But Blender to AE was one that I used a lot. And that one allows you to export Blender compositions to After Effects. So
Hmm.
when I was working on Watermelon Girl, some people are real stubborn about wanting to stay in one software. But like when I look at Watermelon Girl, I'm like, okay, a lens flare would actually be easier with optical flares in After Effects. So I'm just going to send this over and do the lens flare there. And Blender to AE was really good for that. One I used a ton, and this one is on Superhive, is Bone Dynamics Pro. And that basically works like the Wiggle Bones add-on. And people might wonder why I chose to opt for a paid version. And that was because when I looked at the Wiggle Bones add-on, it's great, but it was kind of reliant on the community's free time to
Hmm.
support it. And I wanted to try, since I was doing this in production, I was trying to find something that might have like paid support and thus have more regular updates. So Biome Dynamics Pro was the one I went with. And that essentially allows you to just add physics to bones. So again, looking at how I could make animation and other processes faster and Watermelon Girl, a lot of things like her hair or the frog's tongue or the king's beard and like all those stuff are actually just dynamic animation. So basically I would end up animating like 3 bones, but 10 bones would get animation and look like I had done a lot more than I did. And Bone Dynamics Pro is one that saved me a ton of time. Now, because I use so many add-ons, another one I use that's located on Superhive was Clean Panels. There's a lot of options out there for trying to clean up Blender's UI and organize add-ons, but Clean Panels reached out to me to talk about on my YouTube channel like a couple of years ago, and I just fell in love with that one in particular. What I like about it is that it allows you to just quick toggle on and off all add-ons visually. Because sometimes, like, I'm just trying to work and like I don't need to add Ivy to the scene, and it's just annoying me. So like I just want to turn everything off, and it gives you like filter buttons at the top. So I have like my favorites, and then I have like generative ones, and then I have like animation related ones, and I can just click and toggle between, and it'll just turn all those panels on and off. It also has some tab menus you can create as well that are really nice. Let's see what else. This one, I can't remember the name of the entire bundle, but I can tell you the name of some of the individual ones. They have like key selected objects, graph kit, static channels, and a couple others. And it's basically just this animation bundle of just practical to use time saving animation things. So like for example, delete static channels just looks at your object and it just deletes like the channels on your animated object that aren't making any changes in values. And at the time when I installed it, I know that wasn't a feature. I think they may have added it in an update. Um, and then like key selected objects just allows you to like if you have 10 objects selected, just like right click in the field on like X and just be like, yeah, I want to keyframe on the X location of all of these. And so just like adding like a lot of just really simple features there. For the graph kit, it had a bunch of stuff where it could like scale and remove the graph around and tools that weren't available at all in the 3.0 series. So I really love that set. It's like something like the Ultimate Animators bundle, but those are the name of the individual pieces that are all collected in that bundle. I love yeah, I love that one. Another one I like, I'm looking at my list here. I use Droplet Generator. That's how I did all the water on the bottle. That was just a really simple, clean, nice looking geometry node setup to add droplets. And I actually know that that one is being used on some really high end visual effects for things like uh, Prime and Nike because I have friends that work in those industry and they're like, yeah, we love droplet generator. It's just super quick. So that's a great one. One that I didn't have for Watermelon Girl, but I'm using now and exploring with is called Lens Sim. I like that one a lot because one of the telltale signs that you're doing 3D is that things just look kind of crisp and you have that like just perfect camera look and the perfect lighting look. So one way to add a lot of realism and bring in like the character of like film into your renders is to add textures to your lights, whether that be an IES texture or a gobo texture, and then to add deterioration to your camera to adjust like your aperture and all of those various elements and add texture to the lens. And Lens Sim does all that for the camera just in one click. And I really like it. Like it comes with a bunch of preset lenses, and it's just kind of amazing at how much like filmic value it adds. So that's another great one. This one's not on Superhive, but one of my most used ones is Quad Remesher. He writes it. I think it initially took off in Maya, and then he opened it up to other 3D applications. Not completely clear on the history there. That one just like retopologies everything with Quad topology, and that was massively helpful for sculpting. I have Retopiflow, which is real great for retopology. Obviously, everybody knows that one. One I really liked is called Shaders Plus 4. And well, I had version 4 at the time of installing, but it's called Shaders Plus, and it basically adds like a bunch of like glass presets that make it really easy to do things like caustics. And honestly, I think that the results this shader delivers are better than the actual caustics built into cycles. So I highly recommend that set. I used it for the bottle and it just gave me a much cleaner looking glass with a lot more character in terms of how it casts light around the scene. It's definitely more of like a stylized caustics, but I think oftentimes when you're looking for glass in 3D, that's kind of like what you're looking for when you're chasing after caustics. I use Stopmo a ton. I had that one on there. UV Packmaster, that's a big one. I use that on every single asset. So UV Packmaster actually has you install a whole separate engine for it to like work off of to like pack the UVs, and it has like a ton of features in the packing. All the real tight. So I use that to repack every single character I had. I used UV Squares, which is allows you to take certain things like for example if you unwrap like a pop can, you can just take that center strip and like put it back out to squares. I use that one quite a bit to make it easier to add labels to things. And then I use the Clado asset pack, use the Mossify asset pack. I use the Gobo asset pack. There's a few different ones that I recommend. The Shaders Plus creator has a Gobo asset pack that's really nice. And I use Gobos in almost all of my scenes. And then I haven't used it. I didn't use it on Watermelon Girl, but I'm using it on my next short film, Wooly, the hair system. So those are like a lot of the ones I used. There's a real mixture of like really, really practical add-ons and then some kind of like specific geometry node setups. I tried out a couple different Ivy ones as well. Ivy Pin was useful for creating the castle and the island. So yeah, quite a few add-ons
That's great.
recommend. So yeah.
I mean, when you're making an entire short film by yourself, like you said, there's some things that you're much more interested in doing on your own and other things that you just would rather be able to plug and play and move on with the film.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I wanted to craft the composition and tell the story. I didn't want to spend all day trying to figure out how to do an IV system, you know? And there were certain scenes where I built my own things. For example, the 4 scene is just almost entirely geometry nodes. It's probably my most complex geometry node setup I've ever done. But, when it comes to like the leaves falling, I was like, rather drag and drop this in or like drawing ivy on something. So, if I can save time, I will. So,
Good. Good for you.
no.
That's what it's there for. And I
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah, exactly.
you also mentioned the benefits of paid products, meaning that
Mhm,
you're going to get the support and the updated
mhm,
products, because I think that's something that's important to talk about a lot when we're talking about something like Superhive, that what
mhm.
you're getting there is that professional product that is supported, and that payment is actually helping them to have that time and the resources to continue to support and update and maintain that product as well. So I think there's
Yeah.
to be said for that. When you're purchasing a product, that's what you're getting rather than relying on kind of the convenience or the availability of the community to work on it.
Yeah, I came from um a lot of paid software before I transitioned into Blender, so I was kind of like already used to the idea of like paying for these things. And honestly, the price point of Blender add-ons is still much lower than other software. So for me, it's still kind of like a financial win, even when I have to buy a bunch of add-ons for one product. So yeah. And I also know how much time it takes to build those things. So, happy to support when I can. Even just, I mean, like creating like a YouTube video, like a short one still takes, like 8 to 12 hours. So just for people watching, if you see a creator you like and they're sharing information you like, know that like they spend a lot of time to put that information there. I think a lot more than people realize sometimes. I work about, because I have my full-time job, but I work about 25 hours on YouTube a week. So it's it adds up. So
How many hours do you have in your day?
not many after I'm done working. So, yeah.
Amazing. So, is there any other kind of last comments or advice or anything that you would like to share with the community or anybody who's watching?
Yeah, I guess just having I've been blessed with a larger community on YouTube. The channel's grown larger than I ever thought would be possible, which I'm grateful for. And I would say that just looking at the comments I get and kind of some of the reoccurring things, I see a lot of people discouraged. Some people asking for help, some people saying, "Oh, I couldn't figure this out," and sharing a positive story. Some people lashing out at me and blaming me. So, like,
Figured out
there's a variety of
make me better.
yeah, there's a variety of ways that people express their kind of journey, but one consistent theme that I see through a lot of that is the discouragement of new users, right? Uh, and I think that if you are beginning your Blender journey, focus on the basics. Don't just skip to the cool stuff. You have to learn how to move the boxes around in a really boring way before you can make them pretty. If you try and skip those first 10 steps, you're going to get overwhelmed and probably just drop out. So really focus on the basics. Don't worry about when you're starting. I actually know somebody right now that's about to pull a 7-figure income, and he learned like a new tool in his later age, like much like he's about 10, 15 years older than me, and he's learning new tools. So don't let, like, if you feel like, I didn't do this in college or I didn't learn this in high school, don't let that be a stopping factor, because I've seen people far more successful than me. I'm nowhere near that level of income. I'm nowhere near that. And yeah, and he started much, much later. So don't let age be a factor. And with Blender, it's free. And the other thing is, I see a lot of people discouraged about they call them their potato PCs, right? My first PC that I started learning Blender in was not qualified for 3D at all. So I worked in NPR, and so if you want to make realistic Godzilla, you might have to start with stylized Godzilla first to kind of build your journey up to be able to get that hardware. That's what I did. Is I couldn't afford the hardware I needed to do what I wanted. So instead, I kind of worked with what I had for many years, and over time, accumulated enough income that I could update my hardware, foresee my full vision. So don't let that stop you. You just might need to adjust your vision in the meantime to accommodate what you have. And then just keep at it. Every failure is another step towards success. So if you can't figure out the hair system like me, it took me like 2-3 years before I figured it out. So be stubborn if you want to just keep pursuing. So in summary, there's going to be a lot of things that stop you from pursuing your journey on Blender, and you just can't let them. You just got to keep going. I think a lot of people are viewing people that are successful. Let's say that you want to be an amazing motion designer like Ducky. Well, it's like that took them many years to get to that point. So when you look at somebody and they've been in it for 10 years and you're on year 1, don't think that you're failing because you don't have 10-year quality yet. You just might have to put 10 years in yourself. And, so just stick to it. I see a lot of people discouraged, and I think there's a lot of great artists out there that are not going to become great artists because they think they can't be. But it's like you can. You just got to stick to it. So yeah, I would encourage everybody that you will find success if you stick to it and pursue it. So
Be stubborn.
yeah, be stubborn.
Be stubborn, Southern Shotty.
Yeah, that's my method, is just like, yeah, I'll figure it out eventually. So,
I'm gonna beat
yeah.
you one of these days.
Yeah. That's how you make a short film, is you just be really stubborn that you're going to get it done.
Love it. That's great. Well, thank you for chatting with us, for participating in this series. It's been lovely, and I was very excited. I know we talked mostly about Watermelon Girl, and that
Hmm.
makes me happy. But I had no idea that that's what birthed a lot of these other products and everything for you. So it makes
Hmm.
sense that that was kind of the main focus.
Yeah.
Love your encouragement of the community as well, because I think that is needed. I think everyone's journey started with opening Blender and then closing it angrily and then eventually
Yeah.
coming back and peeking to see if it was
Yeah.
still there.
Yeah. I tried Blender. So I'm in my mid 30s now. When I first started Blender, I was in my teens, and it was in the early 2 series. So when I started it, they had just released Elephant Dream, which is very, very old. And yeah, I would say that I open and shut Blender angrily for probably about 8 years. It wasn't like it wasn't until like my mid 20s that I actually picked it up. So for people that think you can't learn it if you didn't start it early enough, that's not true, because mid 20s some people would consider like late for software. I don't think it's late, but yeah. So just know that if you actually stick to it, you will learn it. I eventually had to learn it for a paid contract, and I was like, well, I gotta figure it. I was like, I gotta figure it out. It was like it was for a job, and so I figured it out for whatever it was I needed for that job at that time. And so yeah, just yeah, be stubborn, keep it open.
Been open. I love it. All right. Well, thanks again. And we are going to close this out for now. And I'm sure we will see more of you soon. Everybody go watch Watermelon Girl if you haven't seen it. You're going to get up to 200,010 more views or something.
Yeah, yeah.
The
I'll
important
take what
thing.
I can get.
They're the
Yeah, yeah,
important.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And
And
we'll
thank you.
see you on Superhive.
That sounds good. Thank you.